It was 2:07 a.m. when the call came in, a short, broken sentence that immediately changed the night. A man was found dead inside his bedroom, the door locked from the inside, no signs of violence, no signs of struggle. By the time the police arrived, the neighborhood was silent, the kind of silence that feels staged, like everyone knows something but has agreed not to speak. The house stood clean and orderly, lights still on, as if death had arrived politely and asked for permission before entering. Inside the bedroom, the body lay straight on the bed, hands folded unnaturally, face calm, almost peaceful. No blood, no bruises, no wounds. If you didn't know better, you would think he had simply gone to sleep and never woken up. The officers checked the door first. Locked. Solid. No scratches on the frame, no damage to the handle. The windows were sealed from the inside. Dust undisturbed, curtains drawn neatly. It was a perfect locked room mystery, the kind that makes experienced investigators uneasy. The doctor examined the body and hesitated before speaking. Time of death was estimated at around 9:40 p.m. The cause was unclear. No visible signs of trauma. No immediate explanation. Just one sentence that hung in the air like a warning. This doesn't feel natural. The victim was identified as Daniel Hayes, 42 years old, financially stable, respected, no criminal background, no history of threats. A man with routines, schedules, and a life that appeared painfully normal. On the bedside table lay his phone, screen dark, battery nearly dead. When powered on, an unfinished message appeared, typed but never sent. "I know what you did, and I won't stay silent anymore." No name, no context, just a sentence cut off, as if death had interrupted the thought itself. Across the room, a single cup sat on a small table. Cold tea. Untouched for hours. The cup was clean, too clean, with only one visible fingerprint. Daniel's. No smudges, no accidental marks. Someone had wiped it carefully, leaving only what couldn't be removed. That detail alone shifted the room's mood. This wasn't random. This wasn't sudden. Someone had planned to leave nothing behind. 3 people lived in the house. Daniel's wife, his younger brother, and a housekeeper who had worked with the family for over 5 years. All 3 were home that night. All 3 claimed they never entered the bedroom after dinner. Dinner, according to them, ended around 8:30 p.m. Daniel excused himself, said he had work, and went upstairs. No one heard anything after that. No arguments, no raised voices, no sound of a struggle. And yet, by 9:40, Daniel Hayes was dead. The problem wasn't just the locked door. It was the timing. Every person in the house had an alibi that placed them inside the home when the death occurred. No one had left. No one had entered. There was no moment unaccounted for, no obvious gap. The house itself became the crime scene. Every wall a witness, every object a suspect. And as the investigation began, one truth became impossible to ignore. When a man dies behind a locked door with no visible cause, the danger doesn't come from outside. It comes from trust, from routine, from the people who had access without needing permission. Because whoever killed Daniel Hayes didn't break in. They were already home. You have not enough humanizer words left. Upgrade your surfer plan. Morning light did nothing to soften the weight inside the house. It only exposed it. Every room looked ordinary, yet nothing felt normal anymore. The investigation resumed with a single goal: break the illusion of peace. The body was taken for post-mortem, and the house was sealed, not because it looked violent, but because it looked too controlled, too carefully untouched. Investigators began reconstructing the night, minute by minute, because in a case like this, time was the only thing that could betray the truth. Daniel Hayes, they learned, was a man of habits. He drank tea every night, always around 9:30, always in the same cup, always alone in his room. He locked his door not out of fear, but out of routine. He valued privacy, especially in the past few weeks. Something had been bothering him. His wife admitted this much. She said he had been distracted, distant, constantly on his phone, often silent during meals. When asked if they had argued, she said no, not recently. Her voice was steady, but her answers felt rehearsed, as if she had practiced them long before the police arrived. The younger brother told a different story, not in facts, but in behavior. He was nervous, restless, unable to sit still. He claimed he spent the evening in the living room watching television, switching channels, barely paying attention. He heard Daniel go upstairs, heard nothing afterward, and fell asleep on the couch. No one could confirm it. No one could deny it either. The housekeeper's statement was simpler. She said she cleaned the kitchen at around 9:15, washed the cups, wiped the counter, and left the area. She never went upstairs. She never entered Daniel's room. She had no reason to. The post-mortem report arrived by afternoon, and with it, certainty. Daniel did not die of natural causes. There were no injuries, but his blood told a different story. He had been poisoned. Not violently, not suddenly, but slowly, with something designed to look harmless, colorless, odorless, something that blended easily into tea. The poison took 10 to 15 minutes to act, enough time for Daniel to drink, feel unwell, lie down, and lock the door behind him. That detail explained the mystery of the lock. He had sealed himself inside, unaware that the danger had already entered his body. The kitchen was searched again, this time with purpose. No broken containers, no spilled chemicals, nothing obvious. But in the medicine cabinet, something didn't belong. A prescription bottle for heart medication, recently filled. High dosage. The name on the label was not Daniel's. It belonged to his wife. She was prescribed a mild dose for anxiety-related palpitations, nothing unusual. But the quantity missing from the bottle was alarming. Enough to kill a healthy man if taken incorrectly, especially when mixed with caffeine. When confronted, she didn't panic. She didn't deny owning the medicine. She said Daniel had complained of chest tightness. She said she offered him a pill to help him relax. She insisted she never imagined it could be dangerous. But the timeline didn't support her explanation. The medication would not dissolve that quickly on its own. It would need to be crushed, mixed, hidden carefully. This was not a mistake made in concern. This was an action taken with knowledge. Still, something didn't fit. Her fingerprints weren't on the cup. Neither were the brothers'. Only Daniel's. Whoever prepared the tea made sure of that. And whoever handed it to him did so in a way that left no trace, except the one thing no killer can fully erase: intent. By the end of the day, the house no longer felt like a place of mourning. It felt like a chessboard, and someone had already made their first move. As the second day unfolded, the investigation shifted from what happened to why it happened. Because poison is never impulsive, and locked doors never lie on their own. Detectives began digging into Daniel Hayes's recent life, and slowly a pattern emerged that didn't match the calm image everyone described. Daniel had been withdrawing money in small amounts, not large enough to raise alarms, but consistent enough to suggest he was tracking something. Bank statements showed irregularities, tiny gaps that didn't belong to him. Someone had been stealing, carefully, quietly, assuming no one would notice. Daniel noticed. His phone became the center of attention. Deleted messages were recovered, and with them came tension. Conversations weren't dramatic, but they were deliberate. Short exchanges, late-night texts, always cautious, always vague, and they all led back to one person in the house, the housekeeper. Messages about money, about trust, about disappointment. Daniel wasn't angry in those texts. He was disappointed. He spoke like someone who had already made a decision. One message, sent at 9:05 p.m., stood out clearly. "Tomorrow, this ends. I can't ignore it anymore." It was never answered. That message changed the timeline. At 9:15 p.m., the housekeeper claimed she was cleaning the kitchen. At 9:30, Daniel's tea was made. At 9:40, he was dead. The gap was narrow, but it existed, and in that gap, the truth was hiding. Investigators returned to the house and reviewed security footage from inside the hallway. The camera was old, low quality, easy to overlook, but it worked. At 9:32 p.m., a figure appeared at the top of the stairs. The housekeeper. In her hands, a cup. She paused outside Daniel's door. She didn't knock loudly. She didn't hesitate. She knocked softly, the way someone does when they know they will be welcomed. The footage showed nothing else. No struggle. No forced entry. Just trust being exercised for the last time. She entered the room, stayed for less than a minute, and walked away empty-handed. When questioned again, her story changed slightly. She said Daniel had asked for tea. She said she was just doing her job. But the poison had to be crushed, mixed carefully, dissolved fully. That required preparation. That required intent. The medicine bottle belonged to the wife, yes, but access did not equal guilt. The wife's fingerprints were on the bottle, as expected. The housekeeper's fingerprints were there too, faint but present, wiped poorly in a rush. That detail shattered the balance. Pressure mounted. The brother was questioned again, this time with evidence on the table. He admitted he knew about the missing money. He admitted Daniel had told him days earlier, but he also admitted something else. Daniel had decided not to involve the police immediately. He wanted to confront her first. He wanted the truth. He wanted to give her a chance. That confrontation was scheduled for the next morning. There was no next morning. When the housekeeper was shown the footage, she didn't cry. She didn't shout. She went quiet. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion. She said she never meant to kill him. She said she panicked. She said she knew once the police got involved, everything would collapse. Years of quiet theft, justified in her mind as survival, were about to end. The poison wasn't meant to kill quickly. She thought he would get sick. She thought she would have time. She didn't. Daniel drank the tea, locked the door, lay down, and trusted the wrong person. By the time the confession ended, the mystery was no longer about how the crime was done. It was about how easily it was allowed to happen. The confession did not end the case. It only deepened it. Investigators knew that panic alone does not explain precision, and guilt alone does not explain silence. Every word the housekeeper spoke was weighed against the evidence, because in crimes like this, the truth is rarely owned by one person alone. She admitted to stealing small amounts of money over time, just enough to stay unnoticed, just enough to convince herself it wasn't real theft. She admitted Daniel had confronted her earlier that evening, calmly, firmly, without threats. He told her he had records, dates, proof. He told her the police would be involved if she didn't cooperate. That conversation ended without shouting, but it did not end without fear. What she did not admit immediately was how she knew about the medicine. That detail came later, under pressure. She said she had seen the bottle many times while cleaning. She knew where it was kept. She knew how often it was used. More importantly, she knew Daniel trusted her enough not to question a cup of tea placed in his hand. She crushed the pills while cleaning the kitchen, mixed them carefully, and waited. When he asked for tea, the decision was already made. Not loudly, not emotionally, quietly. The wife was questioned again, this time with new clarity. She denied any involvement in the poisoning and denied instructing the housekeeper. But denial does not erase knowledge. She admitted she knew about the theft weeks earlier. She admitted Daniel had told her he was documenting everything. She admitted she was afraid of the scandal, afraid of the questions, afraid of what the truth would do to their family name. She said she never imagined it would end in death. But fear, like poison, does not need to be fatal to be dangerous. It only needs to be present. Investigators found no direct evidence linking the wife to the act itself, but they found something else. Silence. She had done nothing to stop what she knew was coming. She had access to the medicine. She had motive to avoid exposure. And yet, she chose inaction. The law would decide whether that made her complicit or merely afraid. Morally, the line was thinner than anyone wanted to admit. The brother's role was clearer. He knew. He said nothing. He stayed out of it. He chose comfort over confrontation. In a house where everyone knew something, the crime did not happen in isolation. It happened in an environment where secrets were allowed to breathe. In the end, the locked door was no longer the mystery. The poison was no longer the mystery. The real mystery was how many moments existed where this could have been stopped. How many chances were ignored? How many warnings were softened into silence? Daniel Hayes did not die because of a single decision. He died because of a chain of quiet choices, made by people who thought staying silent was safer than speaking out. The housekeeper would face the law. The others would live with something heavier. Because when trust becomes routine and fear becomes justification, murder doesn't need violence. It only needs permission. The case closed on paper, but it never truly ended. The housekeeper was charged with murder, her confession supported by evidence, timelines, and the quiet certainty of intent. In court, the details sounded colder than they had in the house itself. Words like dosage, access, and opportunity replaced fear, panic, and desperation. The locked door, once the heart of the mystery, became a footnote. Daniel Hayes had locked himself in, unaware that the danger had already been poured into his cup. The law does not judge emotions, it judges actions, and her actions were final. The wife faced no criminal charges. There was no proof she planned the murder or ordered it. But the investigation left scars that no verdict could erase. She lost her husband, her privacy, and the version of her life that once felt secure. Every question she avoided, every truth she delayed, returned to her in a different form. In silence, in memory, in the knowledge that fear had made her passive when it mattered most. The brother moved out shortly after. He told investigators he could no longer stay in a place where every wall reminded him of what he didn't say. He had known something was wrong. He had known money was missing. He had known Daniel was preparing to act. And still, he chose distance. Not cruelty, not malice, just avoidance. In the end, that was enough to haunt him. The house was sold within months. New owners moved in, new furniture, new paint. The locked bedroom was remodeled first. Walls change easily. Stories don't. The neighbors eventually stopped whispering, but the case remained, referenced quietly in training rooms and classrooms as an example of how crimes don't always announce themselves. Some arrive softly, dressed as routine, hidden in cups of tea and familiar faces. Daniel Hayes is remembered not as a victim of a locked room mystery, but as a victim of trust misplaced and warnings delayed. His final message, unfinished and unsent, became the most honest line in the entire case. He knew he was about to act, and that knowledge, once discovered, sealed his fate. In the end, there was no dramatic chase, no forced entry, no shattered glass. Just a house full of people who knew pieces of the truth and waited for someone else to act. The killer was convicted. The mystery was solved. But the lesson remained. The most dangerous crimes are not the loud ones. They are the quiet ones. The ones that happen in familiar rooms, served by familiar hands, and ignored by familiar faces. Because sometimes the door is locked from the inside not to keep danger out, but to hide the fact that it was already welcomed in.